over to Chris, right?
Yes. Thank you guys for all coming out. There's way more people here than we thought there was going to be here. That's amazing. We appreciate it. Well, than I thought was going to be here. And thank you for Neal and Marge for setting this up. And this venue is amazing and the only place I would ever have my first ever presentation. So thank you guys. And thank you, Ed, for coming out. But you'll hear about him later. You can clap for him later. Hopefully. Let's see.
Your name is?
Oh, yes. Thank you. My name is Chris Piland. And about a year and a half ago, or about 4 years ago, I started riding motorcycles in general. So the first motorcycle I bought was a TL1000, which is a 1000cc L-twin superbike for my first bike. So I'd never gotten on one before that. And so I never thought that bikes were anything more than just really loud noise machines that were designed to go 180 miles an hour down a straightaway, which they're not. I really like the Cub, but they weren't offered in the United States, or they haven't been for the past 30 years. And so I decided to buy one once I found out that they still existed and fix one up and do something with it. So I wouldn't consider myself an adventure motorcyclist per se, but as somebody that's done a trip that's relatively large on a vehicle that's kind of oddly proportioned for it, I can tell you guys that a lot of adventure riders say, it's easy and anybody can do it. And, it doesn't take, much skill. You can do it, not a problem. Anyone can do it. And that's not wrong, but it's not, if that was true, everyone would do it. Everyone would be riding around a bike, right? And for some reason, you guys are here listening to me. So obviously, if I wasn't that special, this wouldn't make any sense. So what happens? Why don't people go on an adventure ride? And the answer is there's a second part to that. You need to make the decisions necessary to get yourself to the finish line or to the starting line. You need to keep making decisions, even if they're the wrong decisions. You have to keep making them until you finally end up at the starting line. And that's always the hardest part of every single adventure ride. It's not going to be the tire you change out in the middle of nowhere. It's not going to be the piston ring that you think you can't find. It's always going to be getting to the starting line. That has stopped more rides than anything else. So on June 6th, 2015 of last year, I started a trip across the United States, and the reason wasn't to have an adventure ride. I had these 3 goals in mind. I was going to go from Monterey to LA, or to South California, where it meets Mexico at the border. And then from there, I was going to ride across to the furthest part, Lebec, Maine. And then, depending on what was happening at the time, I was going to ride all the way back. And the reason I chose these 2 parts is because when you ride across the country, everybody asks, well, what part did you ride across? Did you go from California to, Florida? I did that because there's really not much further else you can cross, right? You've crossed the entire thing. You've crossed the entire continent from end to end, crosswise. So I started off, again, by making the right decisions to get myself to the starting line. One of those things, my assistant is here.
Your assistant event.
Yeah, one of these things was making a whole new wiring loom for that bike. That bike I found for $250 in the middle of an artichoke field, and it had been sitting there for 10 years. Okay, so the wiring harness was a little destroyed because somebody had actually cut through it with a knife. So I had to make an entire wiring harness for it. And it kind of got a little overboard. If you know my background, if you want to ask me stories about what I do, there's going to be plenty of Q&A. But I started taking things that were Honda OEM that I thought could be upgraded a little bit, and I started upgrading them. So they quickly turned into LEDs. The headlight turned into a 50-watt LED. So you go from a 15-watt incandescent filament bulb, and now it's a 50-watt LED. So the way it looks on the background is this is the LED chip itself back here, okay? The reason this is all steel is because it has to transfer its heat. So to do that, this is the driving circuit, the heat sink, and the fan required. It's a little different than Honda's original design. It does have a 5,000 lumen output, though. Your car has about 900. This Cub has 5,000. So a lot of those things kept happening. I kept fixing stuff and repairing stuff. I would go home at night and just think of things I would have to do to get to the starting line. One of them was a 20-foot telescoping antenna for 2-meter communication, because I'm a ham radio guy. And I thought, I'm going to go through Nevada. I'm going to encounter some times where I don't have proper cell reception. So I'll have a radio that I can legally communicate to people within like a 100-mile range, right? So things like this started happening to the bike. And as you can see, if you look at it, it has a few things that aren't really Honda, like a solar panel that's 35 watts and, a massive mortar ammo can to hold all my camera gear. And eventually, you keep making these decisions, and you get closer and closer to the starting line. So this is what the box looks like opened at night with a red incandescent light, because I was thinking if I was going to be filming people and I was going to be rough camping, I didn't want to be seen when I was doing data transfers. So I was literally became invisible. There's this camo net on the back of the bike. So I would just drive someplace and then I'd just disappear for 2 hours, sleep, and then I'd be right back on the road and I'd be driving for the next 10 hours. So more and more of this stuff happened. Oh, you can pause that. And so I got to the starting line, and I did it. On the first day, I made 140 miles, which was further than anybody had ever heard in the small group of friends I had. It was further than anybody had ever gotten on a Cub in one trip. I had made it from here all the way down to Cayucas on Highway 1, which was really nice, right? I was making progress. And eventually I made it all the way down to Southern California, and I made it to the Mexico border, and that was amazing, right? It was 5 days into the trip. I'd gone further than anybody else. I got a slight speeding ticket, or...
Did it say that on it?
No. I was escorted off Highway 101 by a CHP officer who then charged me $293 for his services. He saved my life, probably. But a few of those things happened, and I kept going. I just kept going, driving every day, going and going and going, until finally I made it to Nevada, which was incredibly tough. But I'm not going to go into all these stories. We don't have time for that. If you guys want to ask me questions, again, we can do that later. This is just trying to tell you how to make it across. I finally got to Nebraska at about 2.5 weeks of just constant driving. So you can kind of calculate that thing goes 40 miles an hour. How many hours it would take to get into Nebraska via way of bouncing off the bottom of California. So in Nebraska, there's something quite kind of unique. Fireworks illegal. I know it was amazing to me too, because I'm from California. Fireworks are illegal. Aerial fireworks are legal. Det cord is legal, and safety fuse is legal. So I put my vehicle in the center of all of that and then wired 25 pounds of explosives together with det cord and let it off, because I was from California, and you just have to purge this out of your system when you get a chance. So this is the end result. This is what happened. That's $300 of explosives set off, and that took actually 4 minutes. That was edited down to 30 seconds, so we wouldn't be here for longer than we needed to be. Go ahead.
Cornfield or wheat field?
That was in the middle of a school. That was out because it was the weekend, and it was also night. And I asked the guy at the fireworks stand, and I have like explosives out to here, just strapping it to my bike, bundling it over, stuffing it underneath the solar panel, trying to get more room. I was like, so it is legal to light these off, because this is blowing my mind, that the fact that you can even buy these here. And he's like, looks at my bike, and he's like, you're going to light these off at one time, right? And I was like, yeah, but it's legal, right? He's like, well, it's a Sunday, and the sheriff isn't in town today. Yeah, that should work. And it did. I went to a school, blew them off, and I didn't get arrested. So I kept driving further and further and further, more and more days. And this is not driving to a hotel and sleeping in a bed and then driving on. I had probably, when I left California, I think I stayed in a hotel once. And I think it was because I needed to clean my stuff because I couldn't stand it anymore. Everything else was rough camping. And I don't mean camping in a campground either, because that's too much money. So everything else was camping in a cornfield or camping, behind, a church, camping in a graveyard. People don't go there at night. It's amazing. Wherever I can find. Basically, once you hit the Midwest, places like that are very abundant. In fact, some places, when you cross the United States, there are more ghost towns than there are real towns. So you will actually be driving across, Nevada's a beautiful example. You'll be driving across Nevada, and you'll be like, oh, finally, at this town I can get gas. And it's just a ghost town that was built around a gas station that no longer exists. And you'll keep driving, you'll see another one, and another one, and another one, and finally you'll get to a town that has gas and money and preservatives work, and you can get food there. It's incredible. But anyway, kept driving across, finally made it to Maine, and I was ecstatic. It was 32 days to get to the border of Maine. And at this time, I knew I was doing 250 miles days on a bike. If you're wondering how long that is with stopping and filming and stuff, it's about 10 hours of just riding. Okay, everything else is filmmaking, everything else is eating food, and if there's any time to sleep, you take advantage of that too. So this was me making it into Maine. I was super excited. Every state sign, right? Yeah. Oh, by the way, Maine and Utah are like major state signs because the states kind of get big there. Everywhere in between, there's towns that are built on state lines where one side of the town will be in Missouri and the other side of the town will be in the state next to it. My geography is not that good, but the state next to Missouri. I saw state lines that were the back alley of bars. It's weird. I was on a time frame, so I didn't have a lot of time to explore, but I'll get to it in a second. I did have an adventure while I was on it, so can't snap. This is time-lapse in Virginia, so I had bounced off Maine. It's not in Virginia, it's in Maine. I bounced off off of Lubec, and I was passing through, and it just so happened that the dew point was hitting the right whatever, and the steam was coming off and creating this nice, beautiful cloud that would actually follow the river all the way down. So it was following the same path of the river. And it wouldn't leave the river bank, so it would just stay right above the river. So you had this cloud following the river all the way down. So you're actually looking at what it does over a period of about 30 to 45 minutes. And it just kind of shifts back and forth. An alien. Yeah. Do you guys see anything odd about this picture? Anything?
That's where you came?
Yes, it is. There's a cub located back here, covered in a camo net, and I'm down here, and the only reason you can see me is because I'm sitting up and I'm packing stuff away. So when I say I disappeared for 4 hours, I actually was off the grid. My phone was off, you couldn't find me. So some people say, yeah, I was crossing the country and I tried to stay in this guy's front yard, and things happened, and I don't know what. It's well, yeah, if you stay away from that area, you keep to yourself, nothing will happen.
What months were you doing this?
I'll pause it.
What months were you doing this?
I was doing this from June to August. So across this entire summer. Last summer.
It's July 18th, and we are stealth camped in the side of a park. And there's thunderstorms. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. And we're completely hidden away back here, me and Cub.
And it's raining, so again, no hotels. It's just raining. You get wet. Happens. Go ahead. Next one. So in New York, something amazing happened. I actually ran into somebody that I had admired for a very long time. And they ride on the same vehicles. One of them's in this room. And we met up in New York, and we had a little fun, rode around, enjoyed ourselves. This is us locking up our bikes. Apparently, if you put a camo net over it, it's safer in New York. Didn't realize that till I came back and I was going through the pictures. I was like, I don't think that added anything, but I think I was so used to it that, it blends right in with the concrete of New York.
The British camo net on mine, though, if you look, I've actually got an umbrella covering mine. That's the English version.
You would never know. You would never know. This is New York time lapse. It's time lapse over about 30 minutes. That's what it looks like. We just explored New York for about 2 or 3 days. I would never get to a place, even when I got to Lebec, I'd never get to a place where I could enjoy it because my time schedule was so fast that I needed to, I got to Lebec and I was like, I have 48 hours and 12 of them are going to be consumed with sleep. It was really a logistics thing the entire way. So, we can go to the next one. Statue of Liberty, Freedom Tower. Beautiful artwork, actually. This was all over New York, where people would graffiti stuff. This, I think, was done on purpose, but there would be other places where people would graffiti things beautifully. So it's not just like a spray can of, a gang sign. It's a really great work of art. This is when I was driving back. So that's a 16-year-old Amish boy driving a massive crane, moving logs around. And their entire lifestyle is amazing and unique, and I was so glad I got to see it on my way back.
It doesn't look horsepowered.
It's what?
It's got lots of horsepower.
Well, no, actually, they don't use electricity. They use gasoline. So if they want a fan, and I'm not kidding, I have footage of this, if they want to cool down an area like a room, if you don't have an electric fan, what do you use? Well, you hook up a massive gas-powered engine that runs a belt to a fan. And so this 300-degree engine is just idling away, blowing its heat into the room through the fan it's powering. I mean, they get around it. I mean, it works, apparently. But they're allowed to use gasoline. It's interesting. Yeah, I had moments like this all the time where I just stood off to the side and thought, never intended to take a picture, but it just looked beautiful.
That's California, I take it?
Might have been. It was the hottest summer on record. So, and I was going through it in this gear with gloves until my gloves just disintegrated. Then I rode without gloves. But go ahead.
I went back because you said.
Oh. There was quite a few times where an Apple Maps would tell me that you don't want to go down a highway because you're going to die. So take this totally sanctioned road that is a road, and you'll be fine. Apple Maps will take anything as a road. So this is a 4x4 trail that goes to nowhere. Apparently it's a road. I spent a lot of hours just driving down endless 4x4 trails until I was finally like, I could have just made it down like 300 yards of highway, but you took me on a 16-mile road across this mountain, and you go nowhere. But so this was actually a workaround that worked. So this is what it looks like when you film stuff in the desert. That was in Nevada. Again, the camo net and everything. Nah. Okay, you pause this. So I ran into 3 different car accidents on the road that had happened right in front of me. And I almost became a few of those a number of times. But there was a point in the trip where I thought, I just want less adventure. I'd ran into a car accident. I'd given a hitchhiker a ride across the desert of California, Southern California, for 30 miles. I was sick in a hotel room for 2 days. I just wanted less of whatever this was that I was getting. And this was a car accident that happened right in front of me. And yeah, go ahead and play it. And I am ready to clean my clothes at a laundromat, so I'm wearing no safety gear. And so you just react, and you run out and you clear glass with your motorcycle gloves on. and you try to do the best you can when you come across situations like this. Again, like not riding a tire, not ready for this, but still, I mean, you got to help. Nevada. I was really proud. It was the first day I crossed, so I had to take a picture of it. This was actually pretty much what Nevada was for 48 hours. I tried to cross Nevada in 24 hours, and I couldn't do it. I fell 20 miles short after riding 19 hours straight through the middle of the night. So I started at 10 o'clock one morning, kept riding till 3 in the morning until I hit LA. And what I didn't know is that the temperature gradient between 120 degrees here and the nighttime is very dramatic. And I was set up for 120 degree weather, so I was almost hypothermic by the time I came back. Dust devils are all over the place. There's really nothing out there, just like they say there is.
Were you on the major highways other than
There's no minor highways through Nevada. So yes, I was. And the way Nevada's topography works is that it's just slow bowls from one to the other. So you'll keep going. This is going down, then you gently go up, and then you do that again for about 40 or 50 times all the way across Nevada. And you get these beautiful 10-mile stretches of absolutely nothing.
Now, a naturalist would not agree with you.
Well, I agree. I agree. But when you're on a bike in riding gear, it does feel like there's no organic matter around you. And so, but I agree. You know, there's life out there. This is me actually leaving Nevada. No, I gave other people rides, but no. Well, the Cub holds 2. And initially a friend was going to go with me, and I thought, if anything happens, I need to be able to get both of us out of a situation. So that's why the boxes moved so far back. And my friend didn't come. So when a hitchhiker that I saw walking through the desert, he had 30 miles to walk, and he had nothing but the shirt on his back and a bag of water bottles. And he was horrendously sunburnt. Yeah. I said, hey, do you need a ride? And he was like, yes. And I don't think any other hitchhiker would have said yes. Like the people you meet going down Highway 1 that are like holding a sign with a dog, I don't think they would say yes to jumping on a 70cc motorcycle. That's how desperate this guy was. So, you know, it happens. Riding through Nebraska. This is time lapse. Over the entire trip, I took 6 terabytes of video. This is part of it. So 6,000 gigs of video, if that helps. And of course, this is a 20-minute presentation. That's probably already too long. So I can only show you so much.
You actually just hit 20 minutes, so you're actually doing very well.
Oh, good.
You've got 7 things left.
And you still have our attention. So.
Yes.
Excellent. This is driving back through Moab. Or not Moab, Monument Valley. Yeah. You can ask me a story about, you know, how I actually spent the night with the Navajo Nation that night. Well, not right now, but if you want to ask me later on, I'll tell you guys. It's compressed. There's Q&A. Okay, I'll tell you. So there's this 15-mile track of dirt road, right? And there's one cub bouncing around it for 6 hours taking video. And of course, this isn't a state park. This is in an Indian reserve, Native American reserve. What's that? Right. Well, you need a guide to stay there overnight. So I was in my sleeping bag. A guy offered to say, hey, for $20, if you want to stay here, you can. And I was like, really? In like the park with everyone else? He's like, yeah, absolutely. So I was in my sleeping bag, and he was in a homespun wool blanket right next to me, out underneath the stars. And I asked him, like, well, what do you want to, he asked me, what do you want to do in the morning? I was like, well, I want to wake up really early so I can film the sunrise. He's like, okay. We go to sleep. And I set my alarm clock for 6 o'clock. And at 5:59, he's not wearing a watch, by the way. This is important. That's an important part. At 5:59, he wakes me, he just talks to me, and I wake up immediately, and he's like, Chris, I think it's time for you to go. I think the sun's about to come up. I pull up my phone, and like the alarm starts to go off, and I'm like, holy cow, thank you. And so in the middle, in the very early morning hours, I drive around and I film the sunrise. Gets a lot of footage of that, but anyway, this is part of it. Driving back from Utah, in Utah, there is thunderstorms, thunderheads that develop. So they come out of nowhere. It's about this big on a radar Doppler map, which I was looking at. And it was in the middle of the night, and there was thunderstorms. And so if you know how to work, photography, you can have a long exposure and capture the lightning, because it's the only thing emitting light in a moonless night like this. So that's one of the shots. Another shot. It's kind of hard to see. This isn't a cloud. That's the Milky Way galaxy.
Where was that?
Same place. This is in Utah. It's right after Zion. I think Zion's in Utah. And if you're wondering how to do this, and I won't be long, but if you're wondering how to do this, this is a 2-minute time lapse. Okay, so the shutter's open for 2 minutes, and there's no moon. Okay, so everything's really dark, which means the stars can come out. This is my iPhone playing a video, shooting that light against the cub, which is the only reason the cub is exposed. So, you learn these tiny things as you go along and you get better at it. Go ahead. This is when I was coming back through the Sierras. Again, the Sierras were my hometown. Everywhere else, I'm from Clovis, so I've backpacked before quite a few times. Everywhere else, I had no idea what to expect, but the Sierras, I was like, I own this. I'm going to be able to live. I can live where I want. Like I can go to Lake Italy. Maybe not, but I can get into the foothills that would lead me to Lake Italy, because I've been there before. And so it was really easy. Once I hit the Sierras, I was basically home. I had traveled roughly 7,800 miles at this point over a period of about 65 days. Me waking up in the morning. You pause it real quick so I can give this some context.
I need to go to the toilet.
Yeah, go ahead. I can operate this.
TMI.
So, sometimes people ask, I get this question occasionally, like, what is it like to live on the road and be carefree and, have no worries? And I tell them I'm really not the right person to ask, because I don't know what it's like. When I was on the road, I was driving for 10 hours a day, and if I wasn't doing that, then I was filming. Until finally, it got to the point, and this is on the way back, where I couldn't see anything without having to try to capture it on film. And that distracted me a lot from actually enjoying the experience, but I was doing this to make a documentary out of it. So here we're doing a much easier shot. It's not a panning shot, so the camera just stays there. It's a 14mm lens, just like a GoPro lens, so it's going to capture all of this, which is going to look almost the same on GoPro. And the idea is to capture the road, the twisty, windy road, and the mountains, of course. Behind the scenes, what people won't know when seeing the actual documentary is that I have to drive down like a 10% grade for the shot, and then drive back up and get the camera. So, if you want to see the world, don't make a documentary about it. You'll never see it, you'll just shoot it. There's a difference, believe me. So that's a road that I had to get a shot of myself driving by. The only way to put the camera up there is to walk the camera up there. I'll say this in closing. I made it back. It took me 70 days, and it was 8,000 miles. The only thing on that vehicle that broke was the speedometer. Everything else worked, and that engine is the original engine. So it went 8,000 miles after it sat in an artichoke field in Salinas for 10 years. Uncovered, it was just in the field being rained on. And I ride it every day, all the time. And one last thing, if you want to go on an adventure, in closing, I'm going to say this, if you want to go on an adventure ride, you have to keep making the decisions that get you to the starting point, because after that, you can go across the United States on a small vehicle like that, and it's the easiest thing in the world. It really is. That's the truth. But if you get ahead of yourself and just try to put all these, what ifs in front of you, make all these excuses, you'll never get it. You just have to keep making the right choice. And when I was there on my first day on June 6th at the wharf, number 2, there was a few guys that wanted me to make it across the United States, a few guys that thought maybe I couldn't, and I was the only guy that knew I was going to do it because I had already gotten to the starting line. That was it. Everything else was easy. And I knew that because I wasn't doing anything different. I was copying people that had done it before me. There's a kid that has rode a 70cc scooter, Passport, across the United States when he was 16. Okay, his name's Rafael Ancheta. I've interviewed him. He lives in Berkeley. Ed rode from Indonesia to the UK on the same vehicle. And I studied these guys. If there was a PhD in adventure riding on a Honda Cub, I had studied for it. I had studied exactly what they had done in exactly every situation. So when there was a flat tire, it wasn't like trying to figure out how to pull the rear tire off. You just dump it on its side. It's a Cub. You dump it on its side, you take the tire off, and you put the new one on, you're done. When it overheats, you don't wait 30 minutes by the road to let it cool off. You drain all the gas out of your spare gas tank and then route a drip system so it drips on the engine head so you can go up grades that are like 2 or 3 miles long in a valley, right? Nothing I did was new, but the second I hit the starting line, it was completely easy. So with that said, this is a guy that's much better at this than I am, much more experienced, and I was inspired originally by him, so he took all the limits off. Initially I thought, a small bike can only go small distances, and then once I saw his videos online, it allowed me to do this trip. So that's all I have for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you. And we're not going anywhere, so if you guys want to ask us questions, you can ask us questions all night long.
I was actually thoroughly impressed by that presentation. That was far too slick for your first one, and I'm a bit pissed off, to be honest.
The tank is 1 gallon, and the Cub on paper gets 130 miles to the gallon. But with me on it, with it completely overloaded, it got 133 miles to the gallon. So everybody would kind of look at a gas station. It was really funny because everybody would like, oh, you're filling up with, 1/8 of a gallon of gas. If you have to, make this long trip, how are you going to do it? And I'm like, well, my vehicle is 6 times more fuel efficient than yours, so you just go. It's not going to be the fastest thing in the world, but it's going to get there. And so, yeah, go. To cross the country twice took 60 gallons of fuel. 60.
That's awesome. Prices were a little on the high side.
Times 2 or 3, that's less than $200 or so?
Yeah, gas was the cheapest part of the trip. The more expensive thing was eating trail mix to keep myself alive. Yeah, than it was just to fill the bike up with gas. And it only took 7 oil changes total. And it holds less than a liter of oil. So these aren't like car oil changes where it dumps out. It's like, and the oil is like gone. And you put more in with a bottle and you're gone.
Buying just 1 quart
Yeah.
to do the oil change.
It can't take the entire quart, so you have to hold it around for a while and then use it in the next oil change. Yeah.
So when you bought gas, did you use a credit card or did you pay with pennies and nickels and dimes?
Both. And there's a reason why. Initially, I brought 2 credit cards, lost one in a bar in Illinois. Don't have to talk about that. Second one demagnetized on my way from Kansas. I bank with Bank of the West. Apparently, they only have banks in the west of the United States. So it demagnetized in central U.S. And so all I had was the money on me at the time, which was very, very, very not a lot because I was used to doing the credit card thing. So for a while, I lived on like $6 a day trying to cross the United States back. And the most expensive thing was me because I had to drop my calorie intake from 2,000 calories a day down to like 700 calories a day. And I had to carry that out for about a week and a half. So yes, card and quarters when the cards ran out and you want just the smallest drop of fuel to get you further. Yes, that happened.
Did you get pulled over much by police on the highway or anything?
4 times. All 4 of them were my fault. Thing is, when you drive this far, this fast across the United States, you ride ahead of danger. So you can drive without a tail light across a lot of states because they don't send that warning report to the next district. So, you know, I didn't have time to fix it. I probably should have died. They're just trying to help me out and make me visible. But yeah, I got pulled over by a police officer about 3 times for the same tail light that I promised to keep getting fixed until I finally got it fixed after I'd hit Maine. So, yeah, that's yeah.
Did you bring any tires with you?
No, but I brought tubes. Tires I had to buy in advance. So, what's that?
Uses Gazelle?
Yes, it's a Gazelle tire. Yeah, exactly. You might not know this, but Gazelle tires only last like 1,000 miles.
Really?
Yeah, or 1,200
I've
miles.
heard people tell me 9,000.
That's wrong.
My girlfriend and I bought some in Canada, and they were illegal and down to canvas within 600 miles.
It was a very hot summer too, so when you're going across Nevada. And it's fun because when you can't find tires, you need to find a way to get another 500 miles out of it. So you have to change the back tire for the front tire because the front tire will wear less, especially if all your weight is on the back. So your front tire will be almost brand new, so you can actually flip it around and get another 1,000 miles out of it. But everything was, you know, I need to run it. I'm going to run out of this very soon. I need to go to a Honda dealership. They're not going to have it because this bike was last sold here 30 years ago. And then I need to tell them to ship it 4 states ahead of me. And that's how tires were purchased. That's how anything on the bike was purchased. So. Yes. Yeah.
On your trip route, did you pre-pick the route and kind of scoop it out these places? How long did you took the study on that?
I spent a lot of time with adventure riders that had already done it, Rafael and Chetta specifically. I went up to his house in Berkeley with a map just to find out where generally to go. But the truth is, on a bigger bike, you can do that. You can take highways and go places and plan stuff out. It's so much funner just to take this down a back road. So day by day, it was basically navigation by compass. I'm heading to Maine. I needed to go east. So you continue to go east, and at the end of the day, you can track your progress. You say, like, okay, I went 230 miles today, and I went 160 miles east. And you keep doing that day after day after day. He was different. He actually took Highway 80 across the United States on that.
No.
I wish he was here. He'd give a much more interesting presentation. But yeah, it's day by day, and it's back road by back road. And I have no idea where I went. I have no idea the actual mileage because the speedo broke in Nevada when I crossed the first time. So I'm just going from point to point mileage. So, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you.